I fall about 60 feet, suffered some pretty significant injuries, and was out of the Army for a year and a half. I thought I was a prisoner of war. I go back to Ranger School for 50-something odd days. I've been behind enemy lines, doing missions, and immersed in this situation where that's all I knew. And then there was the fall, and it was hard to comprehend my own reality. And so after I finally was able to better understand what had happened to me, and I realized how weak I was, and how much, how high the wall was in front of me, I realized I had really two options, and that was to just give up or to figure out, how am I going to do this? I had to feel like I was in control of my destiny. Because if you just sit there and wait for somebody else to manage your own destiny,
Hey, let's welcome today's guest, Dr. Keith Landry, a retired U.S. Army combat engineer, ranger, and veteran who brings over 27 years of leadership in logistics, federal construction, and manufacturing. He has led billion-dollar infrastructure programs, multi-site operations, and lean initiatives improving safety, quality, and profitability. Welcome to the show, sir. Good to see you.
And please go ahead and call me Keith, and thanks, Danny. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to share some insights. And my cat has decided to just sort of sit off screen. I think she knows what a camera is, so we'll see if she joins us today.
Yeah, my cat, maybe like 20% of my podcasts feature my cat unless I cut it out because he likes to jump on
they are what they are, right?
Yeah. All right, let's start with leadership. Can you share a moment from your military career that shaped your leadership philosophy or your principles?
Oh, thanks, Danny. I appreciate that question. That it all sort of started for me in my 4 years at West Point, where we're introduced to basic leadership concepts, and we start to come together. My class was the first class with to graduate over 1,000. We started with almost 1,600 cadets. But I think the first really formative process for me that I'm still carrying with me to a significant degree occurred when I was at Ranger School, just after I graduated from the academy. The patrol and rappelling from a helicopter to start our last mission. And long story short, loses control of the situation, not lose control of the situation, but declares an in-flight emergency. And my rappel master cuts my room. I fall about 60 feet, suffered some pretty significant injuries, and was out of the Army for a year and a half. It took, in that time, I started to really gain a sense of people that were trying to help me, and the shared purpose of me getting back to my platoon in Hawaii, and the focus on what it took to regain my strength. We talk a lot about resilience. You hear that term bandied about quite a bit. I realized that there's really kind of three components to that. There's a physical piece, a spiritual piece, and an emotional piece. All those sort of came into play. And I couldn't do it all by myself. Just like I learned in Ranger School, nobody gets their tab by themselves. It's a shared purpose. The teams that are in place to execute these missions, and the things you learn as an officer and a non-commissioned officer. We had enlisted personnel in our class too. Everybody learns that, how to drive this common shared purpose, which allows you to overcome significant adversity. And we're seeing that today. I think every business sees that, and not just the military. So I think those concepts really were driven home for me in that 18 months it took to get back on active duty, to get back to my unit in Hawaii. And I've carried them with me ever since.
And obviously there was a very tough challenge that you had to go through with the injury and then recovering. Like, what part of that process was the hardest? Was it just when you were injured, you fell down from the helicopter? Was it the recovering phase? Was it like emotionally and spiritually when it was toughest to overcome and to deal with?
The hospital, I thought I was a prisoner of war. Go back to Ranger School for 50-something odd days. I've been behind enemy lines, doing missions, and immersed in this situation where that's all I knew. And then there was the fall, and it was hard to comprehend my own reality. And so after I finally was able to better understand what had happened to me, and I realized how weak I was, and how much, how high the wall was in front of me. I realized I had really two options, and that was to just give up or to figure out how am I going to do this. And I really think I fell back on the concept of being a ranger and what's it going to take to get over this, and how's the team going to help me do this. Um, and so finding while I'm rebuilding my physical strength in the gym with the help of some great fitness instructors, and when I go and I found a job as an engineer to re-engage my mind and start feeling like I'm making a contribution. You know, I had to feel like I was in control of my destiny. Because if you just sit there and wait for somebody else to manage your own destiny, I just didn't see any joy or value in that. And so I became very much a stoic, I think, in terms of I can't control what has already happened. That's in the past. My future's in front of me. So what can I do to drive myself in the direction that I want to reach? I can see my objective on the horizon. There's probably any one of a number of different ways to get there. So how do I put a system in place that allows me to analyze the data that I have now and take the right next step? And that became my process, one step at a time, one day at a time, keeping my eye on the horizon as to where I wanted to go, taking it, leveraging all the assets that I had available to me and going out and getting additional resources if I needed them, and working with a team that shared my vision and my purpose to get me back on active duty. And I was fortunate that 18 months later, I was back in Hawaii with a different platoon this time, but I was still back in my unit with a number of the soldiers that was had been there before when I left.
Yeah, and I love to explore how some of the principles, leadership, otherwise from the military can be translated to the business world and to corporate America. And you're working in operations. So let's talk about operational excellence. What does it mean to you? How it looks like in real world beyond the usual buzzwords?
Well, to me, it's really very simple. It's just simplicity in a nutshell. How we do some very, very complicated things. We can make our lives as complicated as we want. So the question really I think to me boils down to how can you put in place standard processes that you can that you can repeat over and over with a high degree of confidence that you get the same result time after time after time. How can you put in place systems and teams that have the right level of responsibility and authority and education and training and coaching and mentoring that allow them to solve problems at the lowest level so that they don't become bigger problems. And in the process, you're reducing risk, you're reducing costs. It's been my experience that if you're not using standard operating processes, you're not measuring anything. If you're not measuring anything, you're not improving anything. And you really have to put in place a mindset, some people call it a growth mindset, that helps drive these cultures of we can avoid these injuries. We can avoid those quality errors. And by doing that, you're taking care of your people. You're reducing your costs. You're keeping your customer happier. You're collecting data by using by ensuring process discipline, by having the right leads and the supervisors and the managers in place, checking the right things at the right times, be it every hour, every day, putting the right metrics in place so that you have the dashboards in place that allow you to catch your issues as far upstream as possible. To me, that's operational excellence. And you've got the right systems in place when you get to step away, you go on vacation, you're over here taking care of something else, something flares up and never gets to your attention because your team handles it in stride. And to me, it sounds crazy. The best, you've achieved what you want when you feel like you no longer need it, because your team is, you can now go on to a higher level purpose and higher level project because your team is running on all cylinders and and can handle the situations that they're facing routinely, and they understand when to elevate things to your level. Otherwise, you provide the top cover, they get it done, and they have a sense of pride in the shared outcome too. Gets back to the whole shared purpose that we talked about earlier from Rangers. Make sense?
Yeah, it does. And let's talk about lean principles. In my industry, in my profession, software engineering, it's used across the board. I think it's the basis of all of the project management and operations when it comes to developing software. And also, I've used this approach a lot when working on my startups, small businesses that I've tried, and some of them failed, some of them didn't. But it seems like this approach is used across the board in different domains. So, what's your experience with lean principles? Maybe you had an opportunity to use that to solve complex problems and deliver results when things are quite complicated.
I appreciate your thoughts and your comment about the lean, and you're probably very familiar too on the software side with Agile project management, Agile project delivery. Had a chance to do some of that as well. Some folks aren't and again, back to building that Agile team or a lean focused team, I think really gets back down the mindset and having the right processes in place, which allow you to quickly analyze where you are, figure out the need, you know, try something, adjust, refine, adjust until you get to where you need to, where you realize the direction you're going isn't going to get you there, so you can make change. If we go back to very early in my journey as companies that I was with, I'm going to keep some names out of it, just to sort of keep it generic. But when I was responsible for 8 different locations that essentially operated as shipping floors for a large global OEM, shipping their equipment, doing some minor dealer modifications before the equipment left the facility. Not this past presidential election, but the one before. The year before that, we were told the projections for manufacturing were going to go down by about 25%. Just business outlook. The customer didn't, was going to reduce how much they were making. And so when that's your only customer, that's a pretty significant hit, 25% off the top line. And so the team and I sat down and we sort of thought about what we could do, and we realized that our parent company that we had just been acquired by had essentially a lean focused continuous improvement program that we could take advantage of. So we spent 6 to 9 months putting in place that system with dashboards, metrics, training on how to use it, focus on different types of waste analysis, applying the lean principles that would allow us to handle the reduction in equipment we were processing. So our top line revenue was not going to take a hit. But we took the approach of my top line may go down, but my bottom line can still go up because I'm keeping more of the dollars that I bring in. Over time, that turned out to be true. At the end of the first year of operation after the election, we found that we did have, in fact, revenue was down 25%, but our EBIT was up multiples of that. And in the process, we had some great second and third order effects as well by putting in place all these SOPs and these metrics that we were following that improved our throughput. We found that we were reducing risk. We were better managing risk inherent in the process. So we went 50 weeks into the calendar year before we had our first lost time injury. And then we only ended up having one across all 8 facilities for the first 12 months we were doing this. And in the process too of reducing that risk, we had fewer quality errors, fewer shipping errors. And all that money then just contributed back to the bottom line, which helped us with the significant improvement that we had in EBIT. And so that was the big lesson, was that this stuff works, but you can't just say, hey, today's Monday, today's Friday, we're going to start this on Monday. It took us a good 6 to 9 months of prep, putting things in place, training, building things, talking about it, coming together as a team. This was our shared purpose. We were going to survive this reduction in revenue as a team, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, and one of the topics I like to talk about on this podcast, and I had a chance to interview people like General Funk, who led TradeOc. We talked about leadership development, which is how you develop the new generation of leaders. And in the business world, what you do on your side is you develop new leaders across the middle management and different domains. So how do you coach these middle managers to lead with confidence and consistency? And how do you share your knowledge and your principles with them to ensure that they are shared across the hierarchy?
Firstly, I couldn't help but smile when you mentioned General Funk. He won't remember me at all, but I'm dating myself here. But in the first Gulf War, Captain Funk and Captain Landry were in the same logistical battalion as we moved up into Kuwait as part of it. So it was great to see him do as well as he did. So uh, so I'm, my hats off for General Funk. So back to your question, how do we build middlemen? So right now, for the first 15, 20 minutes of this podcast, we've been talking about Landry saying, talking about this vision, senior executive do this and senior leadership needs to do this. And you can't just, we need to plan this and put these resources in place. But you can't just flip a switch and demand that the production do this. There's a huge layer in between that executes the vision, right? How do you make sure that you got the right leads, supervisors, managers in place with the executives, all the different layers, checking the right things at the right time so that it's not a micromanagement, but how are the gears meshing so that things get done at the appropriate level and issues are floated up when they need to be. How do you make data driven decisions? How do you collect the data? How do you make sure the high quality data gets into the pipeline? It really comes back to this idea. How do you put standard operating processes in place that you can measure, observe, tweak, continuously improve? I mean, just imagine if you're doing something 1,000 times a week and you're able to lean out 1 minute, 5 minutes of waste in a service cycle, and you saved yourself 5,000 minutes in a week. What can you do with those 5,000 minutes? You devote them to additional quality checks. You now have time for more billable activity, so you can raise your revenue without raising your operating costs. Lot of options. It goes back to the idea of not allowing, but people now feel that they are in control of their own future, their own destiny, the processes that they're putting in place. And so teaching, using the right systems to evaluate the ideas and the tweaks for continuous improvement. Does it cost more? Are you spending more than you're getting out of understanding all that and learning how to operate that improvement cycle as a team? I think it's important, and all that is coaching. And my team will tell you about a term I use a lot. It's called top cover, and I think it's very important for the senior leaders to provide top cover for their team. I hear described as psychological safety. People need to just feel safe airing their thoughts, making a decision, realizing that even if they don't get the results that they thought they would get, that they're not going to get fired for it. They're safe. They're not going to get yelled at. And part of that, I think, too, is you can't let other senior executives correct your people or demean your people or reprimand your people in public. You shoulder that. That's your responsibility. You take that and you take it publicly. And then you talk to your folks in private and you have a discussion as to what we could have done differently and better. And this is all part of your weekly one-on-ones that you're having. That I found that just talking with the team 10, 15 minutes individually once a week. And then we would have a 40-minute, 45-minute long team meeting at the end of the week. And then checking in with each other at the end of the day went a long way to allowing people to know that they were heard, they were valued, and if they had an issue, they would reach out. And when you find that your team there's lots of crosstalk going on and you're not part of it, I think it's a great thing because when they feel that they need to, they'll come to you. And it allows you to focus on other higher level things while the team becomes self-managing and is moving and stays aligned with your vision.
Yeah, and it's interesting to observe how you apply things that you've learned from the military, like SOPs, or applying the Stoic philosophy, separating things that you can and cannot control to the business and operations. It's clear that it's definitely very helpful. And for the last topic that I want to discuss before we wrap this up, looking ahead, what trends should operational leaders be preparing for? Maybe something that will change with the current technology that is coming out with AI or something else, or maybe the geopolitical tensions or whatever it is, maybe something else. So what advice you wanna give to the operational leaders?
Yeah, I think you might have hit the big one when you mentioned it in passing, but let's just talk about AI for a second. You can't open up LinkedIn and you can't go online anywhere without stories of AI is just gonna change the world, and the way we do business. And so I'm reminded of a book I read. I think the book may even be older than you. And imagine computing 30 years ago. Everybody's going to have data. There's going to be so much data. Our systems are going to allow us to just have tons and tons of data. The business advantage is going to go to who can mine that data fastest to get to some actionable intelligence that they can leverage in their business. And to me, that's what AI basically boils down to is no matter which system you're using or project or program you're using, you're really looking for a way to analyze faster, to create time. Just like when we went back to this idea of using lean management to bring out waste in your processes, so you now have additional time for billable activity or to do other things that keep your operating costs down while you're and it gives you the opportunity then to increase your bottom line. How are we going to use AI to do something very similar? Because now you have tools that do the analysis faster, but you also then have to understand the tools, you have to validate their use. You can't just assume that it's going to be done. It gets back to this idea of data quality. Data quality isn't somebody else's responsibility. It's your responsibility if you own the process, because if you make sure that your team is executing that process consistently with discipline, then good data gets into the pipeline. You can't blame the accounting team for bad invoices if the data that they're using to justify the billing never got into the system correctly in the first place. So what is the senior team going to do to help drive the proper use of AI to do the things that they're trying to get done? You can't just say, hey, AI is great, go out there and do it. Some people will get it right. Other people are just going to be lost in the wilderness because it's kind of overwhelming. It's our responsibility as senior leaders to provide structure, alignment, put the right teams in place, the right coaching, the right training, so that people can gain confidence in the use of the tools, and they can be shown how it's a positive tool for the future, not just a threat to their existence. And I think sometimes it is a little bit there may be too much of that, whereas really the focus needs to be on here's a tremendous tool. Let's figure out how to use it to our collective benefit, and the team will follow the leader's example, I think. And so it's up for us to set the proper example. Make sense?
Before we finish, any final words or a closing thought that you want to share with the audience, with the viewers? Anything that you want to tell them?
I guess that kind of goes back to this idea of Stoic approach, right? And going all the way back to young Lieutenant Landry hitting the ground and his sword after your pillow gets cut. But in all crisis or in all chaos, there's opportunity. It's up to us to find it. And if we find it and we can leverage it and we can stay calm and maintain control, put the right team in place with the right systems in place, we'll be better off downstream than we were upstream. And so don't look to change. Don't fear change. You should see the change as a chance. It's an opportunity, but you have to attack it with the right mindset. Otherwise, you'll let it overwhelm you and immobilize you, and then the advantage goes to your competitor. And I think we don't want that in the military, and we sure don't want that. Take care of our team by taking care of the company, managing the opportunity that are taking advantage of the opportunity that we can acknowledge.
All right. Well, great episode. Thank you for sharing your story and the advice and insights about operations. Great stuff. Appreciate your time today. And yeah, thank you for joining.
Oh, thanks, Dan. I appreciate it, and I look forward to sharing my newsletter with your followers and getting their feedback on topics as we discuss them. Thanks again.
Get